As I talked in my previous video about people who can actually become over emotionally activated in context of the post-traumatic stress disorder, we will also have a group of people who can actually underactivate the trauma memories. So that means they might be actually having problems with and engaging with their emotions, with their thoughts, and also with actual images of what has happened around the trauma incident. So in today's video, I'm gonna be giving you a few reasons why this might be happening. So in some cases, when we notice that people they might be experiencing very little emotions when they talk about what has happened for them at the time of the trauma, it might be that actually the person is ruminating about the trauma. So they might not be re-experiencing the trauma. They might not be experiencing flashbacks or nightmares about the trauma, but they might be ruminating, thinking about what has happened to them in the past. Therefore, the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder might not be the most comprehensive diagnosis in order to understand the experience, and why it is actually really important to know whether there are ruminations, whether there are intrusions. It is because in cognitive behavior therapy, how we approach working with intrusions and ruminations is slightly different. And if you would like to learn more about the difference between intrusions and ruminations in context of post-traumatic stress disorder, you can head to my channel where I actually have a video where I explain in details the differences. Another reason why some people they might become underactivated when they talk about the trauma, it might be to do with the fact that about 10% of our population actually have difficulties with actually creating images in their mind. That's why doing the relieving trauma work in context of the cognitive behavior therapy might be actually very difficult if someone has difficulties with generating images. If you have suspicion that actually someone might be struggling to generate those images in their mind, you can actually ask them to describe a very simple object, like maybe a candle holder, and if they could create this image in their mind and tell you what shape it is, what color it is, how big it is, and you will see that they're actually really struggling with generating that image. So it might be actually quite difficult for them to do the relieving work with you. So that will mean that at this point, perhaps the therapy treatment would just have to be readjusted to the needs and capacities of that person. Another reason why some people they might be underactivating the trauma memories, it might be to do with avoidance. So some people they might actually want to avoid feeling certain emotions because they might have certain beliefs that they associate with certain emotions. So people they might be actually holding certain beliefs about certain emotions. So they might believe that these emotions are unbearable, they're not gonna be able to experience them, they're not gonna be able to control them. Some people they believe that they might actually pass out if they're gonna let themselves to experience certain emotions. So some people they might avoid going into certain memories consciously, where for some other people, because they've been maybe doing it for such a long time now, that avoiding going to certain memories actually become an unconscious process. And this might be also happening for people who maybe grew up in a households where maybe talking about certain emotions wasn't encouraged. Avoiding talking about certain emotions was actually encouraged. So now as a result of that, the person actually just continue doing what they have been told, what they've learned in their childhood. And if we notice that there's that sort of dynamic happening in a therapy session, then we can actually ask the person, like, what are actually their predictions that if they're gonna go into the trauma memory, what's gonna happen, what is the worst that might happen for them. And also we could ask them, like, what do they think, like how long those emotions they're gonna last for. And very often people they will actually come up with very catastrophic ideas of what will happen to them if they're gonna start talking about certain things. And in those instances, I think it would be quite helpful then to explore how the emotions they've been talked about in a family, and then also think about the situations when they were actually able to manage their emotions in their current life. Another reason why some people they might underactivate the trauma memories in a therapy room, it might be to do with the fact that they might be worrying about being judged by the therapist, especially if they hold a lot of shame in context of the trauma. And it might also happen that some people they want to protect their therapist from the unpleasantness of their trauma. And again, if we see that someone is holding back, that someone is not fully comfortable with expressing how they're feeling, what they're thinking. We can only encourage them by asking certain questions. So for instance, like I said before, we can ask them what is the prediction that what will happen if they're gonna actually share fully what has happened there. Another reason why some people they might be underactivating the trauma memories, it might be to do with the negative meaning that they ascribing to those memories. So if we're gonna take an example of a person who in the childhood they've witnessed the father being abusive towards the mother, but the father actually had a really good relationship with the child, with that person. So as a child, that person actually idolized the father. So now in their adulthood, when they're in a therapy, they really avoid talking about the trauma that they've experienced because the trauma was caused by the father. So by going to those painful memories of what has happened in their childhood, they will have to come to terms with certain very painful emotions, realizing that maybe the father wasn't as perfect, that the father was also abusive not only to the mother but also to the children by exposing them to the abuse. So that idolized image of the father that the child might be holding now might be actually changing into image of father who actually was an abuser. And for some people it might be actually quite difficult to comprehend that, to actually admit to that, because they might be associating a lot of pain with it, and that be the reason why they will be actually avoid going into this memory. So that will then create this underactivation of trauma memories. If you found this video any helpful, then please like it, subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one then. Thank you. Bye bye.